Hi everyone. Today we are going to talk about legal innovation and a legal career with our speaker McGinn, Innovation Manager at Fasken. Nice to meet you, Michael.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you too, Mykyta and Zach.
Yeah, and our moderators of this event is Mykyta Zhukov, it's me, co-founder of Canadian-Ukrainian Legal Alliance, and Zach Elfstrom, co-founder of Canadian-Ukrainian Legal Alliance. And today we'll speak about trends and niches in the legal market in Canada, using legal innovations in a law firm, essential skills of a modern lawyer, and is proficiency in legal tech tools a necessary component for a modern successful legal career, or is it possible to succeed without it? And our first question is, how do you think, Michael, legal tech innovation is changing the way law firms operate, and what impact do you see this having on the legal industry as a whole?
Well, it's a good question. And I think we're in a very, very transformative kind of state currently. And it's not necessarily just with the advent of, front page news of like Chat GPT and AI, but in general, major digital transformation kind of efforts have been in place for quite some time. So when it comes to the changing of how law firms operate, there are several different factors I think that have changed, and they're technology based. Now, a lot of my answers are going to be very tech driven, mainly because of my role in innovation. So there are other areas that are changing, obviously, in the practice of law that I might not be as involved in. But if I was to, kind of characterize what, some of those big changes are, one is it's in the efficiency of processes within law firms. So, as an example, anything that is routine work, high volume kind of work that you see that doesn't really vary a lot, that is being replaced by automation, which is good news, I think, for legal practitioners, both lawyers and paralegals, and anyone that's in a position like a legal staffer. Mainly because it's removing that routine work. So there may be a bit of hype out there in the media that these types of jobs are being replaced, but what I see on the ground is that a lot of that routine kind of work, that administrative work, is now being replaced, allowing lawyers, allowing paralegals, and legal staff to actually focus on some of those bigger ticket items. So I see it as a very positive thing. Beyond that, obviously accuracy in work product, having the tools that allow you to be a better lawyer and be more accurate. And a lot of that has to do with being able to tap into institutional knowledge. So, for example, if you have precedent banks within a firm, either a small firm or a large firm, being able to tap into that knowledge and use it effectively is a huge part of it. Data is a huge part of it as well. So data analytics and the matters that firms manage, that massive amount of data that law firms have and retain can be very, very useful. And technology helps you use that data to make better decisions in the future because you've already kind of established that baseline of knowledge. Other items, again, as like I said, automation is a huge part of it. There is an entire wing of the innovation department on the Fasken side that is focused on automating processes and automation of documents, and they do fantastic work. And it really, really takes what used to take hours, if not weeks, and really kind of brings it to completion within moments, essentially. And so that's, again, a lot of what someone in an innovation manager position would do is really just kind of analyzing those processes and determining which ones can be automated, and so it is a full-time job. I mean, it takes time to kind of identify these things, and sometimes we make mistakes, and we learn from those mistakes. But in general, that's what we try to do, is to remove those types of those routine kind of high volume processes. The last one, and one that's kind of near and dear to my heart. So my role specifically is more client-facing for client innovation. So really what that means is I work very closely with our clients in collaborating with them, working with our lawyers in order to add value to those services beyond just traditional legal services. So one of the things that I think that we're seeing there's a that tech innovation is changing is transparency with clients. You get more information about what you're spending your money on, and that's important to clients because they have limited budgets and they want to know the status on certain matters and whatnot. We're able to present that to them by utilizing client portals that have dashboards where they can get real-time data on the status of matters, access documents and work product from their lawyers, and also access tools that we may customize for those clients as well. It gives them a lot more, a stronger client relationship, because we're providing quite a bit more than what you would say would be a traditional legal service delivery.
Okay, can you tell us about the type of work you do and what kind of impact you hope to make in the future?
That's a good question. So yeah, again, my main job is primarily in digital service delivery on the client side. So it's all focused really on client innovation, which really means in this instance, establishing a portal with a ton of different types of integrations, a lot of the tools that all law firms would use, big law firms, taking that, packaging that, and delivering it to our clients who may not have that infrastructure in place, right? So our clients tend to be in-house departments, and they may not have the kind of functionality or that infrastructure in place. We're able to provide them those types of tools and develop tools for them to really help them become more efficient in their own operations. So that's a huge focus of ours. Where, like in a day-to-day kind of process of like how I do my work and how my team does my work is we're very big proponents of design thinking. And the idea really there, to sum it up in a nutshell, is that you're not so focused on the solution in the beginning, meaning that technology. So you're not pushing technology on anyone necessarily. What you're doing is you're spending a lot of time understanding the actual problem that you're trying to solve, and then going back and then validating it with the client. Is this the problem that we have here? You also want to look for problems that the client may not even be aware of, right? So you have to do a lot of digging, it's a lot of research and a lot of interviewing, and it's an iterative process where you're developing a solution for them. And maybe creating a rapid prototype and then getting an idea what your feedback is on it, and then refining it until you have a solution that works for them. So if I was to loosely characterize the focus on problems versus the actual established solution, I would say 70% of it is understanding the problem, and the other 30% is really establishing that solution.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing law firms in terms of legal innovation, and how can these be addressed?
Well, there's one that I would say that I would imagine if you ask this question to anyone, they're going to have the same answer across the board in my type of role. It's adoption of technology and the resistance to change, right? A lot of, one of the things I've learned in the past is that even if the technology is great, if people are overburdened by a million different types of pieces of software or solutions that have been implemented in order for them to practice law, they actually feel burdened by it because there's just so much to do. And all of a sudden now you have all this admin work of working on these multiple platforms, and it kind of defeats the whole purpose of kind of making everything more efficient and providing these tools. So adoption can be a challenge sometimes. And I'm a big believer, and I'm not necessarily saying that I'm an expert in this. This is like something that you learn over time, and I'm continuing to learn, is really simplifying those processes, not only just bringing in the right technology, but really explaining the workflow and how that works for our lawyers day to day, so that they understand that smooth process. And if you can't really, if that value proposition isn't communicated effectively, you're not going to get that adoption that you need. And if you don't have adoption, it doesn't matter what you have. You could have the magic button, an AI button that gives all the answers in the world, hypothetically. But if no one adopts and uses it, you just wasted a lot of money, right? And so that is a huge focus, is really just making sure that you can get that value and demonstrate that quickly to our lawyers, essentially, so that they understand how these tools work and how it works in their day-to-day practice of law. So that I would say that would be primarily the big one there. Other ones that come to mind would be just the nature of law practice in general. It's a risk-averse industry. That makes it really difficult when you're in innovation and everyone is skeptical and everyone is very critically reviewing everything that you do and trying to find fault in it. And that's what lawyers do. We're really good at doing that and being risk-averse. We're hardwired that way, right? So it makes it difficult in some sense compared to other industries, but it also makes us more resilient in that sense, because we're able, if we overcome that hurdle, we've really, proven something. And so I think, culturally speaking, that's a major one. And the idea with a lot of law firms is, again, that, since they're risk averse, the tolerance for failure is pretty low. And it should be. I mean, again, we're practicing law. We're not practicing law to lose every case that we do in litigation or anything like that. But in innovation, you're always trying to create a solution that is novel in some sense. And you have to have a tolerance for that failure to a certain extent. And so that is a bit of shaping the culture as well. It is common in the tech world. Failure is expected. In the legal world, it's a little bit of a hurdle that you have to clear, that it's okay in this instance. Obviously, you don't want to waste a lot of money, though. So, that's an important part of it, too.
How do you generally approach evaluation and implementing new legal tech solution at your firm, and how do you determine their success?
Well, again, my personal belief and what we do in our team as part of our process is really starting with the problem and not the solution. Otherwise, you have a solution in place, you have a solution in search of a problem. So really understanding those problems and having some subject matter expertise, or more importantly, reaching out to people who do have that subject matter expertise and working and collaborating with them in order to reach some sort of solution is critical. So there's a lot of legwork there. And I would say that without a doubt is an iterative process. You're not necessarily just working for months and months to get this final product out the door. It's more of an iterative process where you may have a rough and ready kind of prototype. You see what the reaction is to it, whether it's moving in the right direction, and you continuously iterate upon that in order to develop the proper solution. So that's a huge part of it. When it comes to evaluating, there's two different real ways to kind of evaluate. One is quantitative data. So it's simply stats from maybe the tool that you've developed or the one that you've implemented and procured. And that could be as simple as basically user logins. If you see growth in user logins and they spend more time within a platform, then you know that you're making some progress, right? So the numbers will generally kind of point you in the right direction. So this is kind of those types of things kind of establish your performance indicators. That kind of give you an idea, hopefully, of the return on an investment that you put into either developing a solution or just procuring and implementing that solution. The other side, and my personal favorite side of that, is qualitative data. So it's a little bit different than that data that you're actually just getting from stats when it comes to the usage of an application. It's focusing on workshopping with clients and speaking with the clients, and really, again, getting an understanding of that problem. And as it evolves and they start to understand at a deeper level what they need, and they generally do, taking that information and building upon it and getting that verbal feedback through interviews and just workshops is something that we measure as well, because you realize at that point that you're reaching the goal that you're trying to reach with that client. And so there's a lot of value in that, and you don't hear it as much. Everything is always about data, and data is incredibly important, but that qualitative data that you get in that personal relationship with the client is as valuable, if not more valuable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you provide information on the types of legal tech products commonly used by large law firms? Additionally, is there a growing trend among these firms to develop in-house products that utilize technology and enhance client operations and decrease costs?
So yeah, I mean there's a wide spectrum of tools that we use, right? And every year it's changing. I mean, yeah, I would imagine to a certain extent even generative AI is going to be certainly influencing that even more when it comes to drafting tools. But the typical kind of tools that you see in a large firm are in several different, like what I would call like categories or buckets, from practice management at a higher level to the drafting of contracts and drafting tools, contract review and analysis tools. So for example, we have AI tools that, although not like Chat GPT necessarily, but what they do is they extract language and terminology from contracts for review. It could be for an M&A transaction, for due diligence purposes, or litigation for that matter. Using tools like that, that's a huge part of it. Docketing, just basically timekeeping. We're seeing a lot of new tools come out that are utilizing AI as well. They kind of know what you're doing. It kind of feels a little creepy actually, because it actually monitors you on your computer, and knows that you've been working on a document for the last 3 hours, or sent emails out for like the last hour, or whatever it is. It makes it a lot easier for lawyers to, they may edit those dockets, obviously, but they have that timekeeping capability while they're busy actually doing the work they want. And then one thing that, you speak to any lawyer out there that's in the law firm world as opposed to the corporate world, is that's one of the biggest headaches, is that timekeeping. It's just like getting those dockets in. And so there's a lot of improvement in that area. Beyond that, as I mentioned earlier, one of the big focuses on my team is process automation and document automation to a large extent, right? That's a huge part of it, right? Anything that is routine, that is high volume, hypothetically can be automated. And the ideal state is to automate all of those processes eventually. So it's identifying those opportunities, identifying the current state, how long it takes to accomplish, and what that variance is as far as any complexities or issues that you may see normally, fixing those issues, making it a more efficient process, a more accurate process, and a faster process. There's a lot of focus on that. Another area that I'm not as close to, but certainly where you see a lot of the big innovations occur in the legal space, is in e-discovery in litigation. That is where, at least in my knowledge, first time I really saw any AI tools really kind of implemented, and this goes back quite some time. And so e-discovery tools have always been kind of on the forefront of maximizing whatever that technology is out there in the marketplace and utilizing it in a legal context. So that's a huge area there, and there are a ton of vendors in that particular area that have had incredible products in the marketplace for a very long time. Lastly, client collaboration. And again, that's where my focus is primarily, and it's really about bringing all of those great tools that we just talked about, packaging them and making them available to our clients who don't have that infrastructure in place. So they have the ability to extract data from contracts. They have the ability to collaborate with their lawyers on our side in a real-time environment. They have redaction tools, all of these things that law firms are used to using. We're providing them as part of a service. And so that's a huge part of it there. And that is evolving quite a bit as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So the next part of questions from Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. All of this talk of implementing tools made me think of something. Is all of this legal innovation also driving a need for project management in the legal field?
Yeah.
And project managers? Yeah, what can you tell me about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that would maybe one of the biggest skill sets, the non-legal skill sets that I think has really become incredibly apparent that you need within law firms. There was a time, it wasn't that long ago, because even when I was practicing law, which wasn't like the ancient days, it wasn't that long ago. The idea of having a legal project manager within a firm was kind of exotic. You didn't have that, right? Not only do we have teams of legal project managers that work on specific client files or large matters, for example, like litigation matters, but a lot of our lawyers actually have, PMP certifications. There is a focus on that. The real value is seen by a lot of our lawyers as far as how project management can improve their practice and improve those outcomes for their clients. So I only see growth in that area. If you're a project manager and you've worked in the professional services industry, in any industry, certainly being able to plug into the legal space, I think is a good place to look, because it's only going forward at this point.
Really interesting. And you mentioned too that it's one of the more sought after skills now. So what are some of the other skills right now that legal professionals can build to really stand out in the legal job market?
That's a good question. I guess, it has a lot to do with maybe your practice area. And so, being a little out of, directly practicing for roughly about 12, 13 years now, there may be some better answers that others may be able to provide. But what I can say is that having a good practical working knowledge of the industry that your clients are in, that's important, right? So you have to have a kind of a passion for that industry and what your clients do. It doesn't necessarily mean that, like, for example, if you're a lawyer that works in emerging technologies, it doesn't mean you have to be the world's greatest C# programmer. If you are, great, and we have some lawyers at our firm that are fantastic programmers, but you don't necessarily need to be that. But what you do need to do is understand what it is that these people do, how they develop their products at a high level, and what kind of drives them, what makes them go to work every day, and show some genuine interest in what you do. And at our firm, I think that's one thing that I've really seen in all of our practice areas is they have that industry knowledge is much deeper than just the practice of law. They really truly engage the clients. And I think this is critical no matter what area you practice in law, because as we move forward, and I'm hearing this more and more from clients, they want business partners. Of course, they want great legal services, but there are a lot of really great law firms out there in the world that offer really great services. So how do you differentiate yourself from that other great lawyer at firm ABC? In this case, it's really understanding the industry and providing them guidance and advice where warranted, that allows them to really get some additional value and really view you as a partner. So hopefully that kind of answers the question here in a way, but I do think it is critical to really kind of look for that niche area. And the vast majority of lawyers that I know always had a bit of a past life, whether it was an undergrad or some area that they worked in the past. You could capitalize on that. If you have a background in software or medicine or whatever it is, use that to your advantage. That's your superpower. You practice law already, but you also have this niche area that you've been focused on that gives you a unique perspective in the practice of law. And maximizing that, I think, is important.
Earlier, you talked a bit about some of the client-facing work too, and some of the innovation client-facing, and naturally that must involve a certain amount of client data and personal data. And I think this is quite relevant with Bill C-27 is there going to be need now for internally having privacy specialists to deal with all the, obviously the law firms have privacy departments that deal with client-facing work, but I'd imagine internally there'd be work to do with data mapping and making sure that, so what's going to be
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. One of the areas I've seen a tremendous amount of growth since I've been working in firms here in Canada is in privacy, and have certified privacy officers working in law firms, info security experts, We have an entire department of these types of individuals. And again, that would be something that, several years back would have been exotic. But if you have a background in this area, like, anybody has a CIPP designation, for example, I would imagine you would not have a hard time finding work within law firms. I mean, we need that. And if there's any industry or space that takes that seriously, it is legal. And I would imagine that the demand is much higher than the supply of people who are in that area. And all I've seen personally has been growth in that area.
That's super interesting too. And we talked about it, alternative legal careers. It's such a great prospect for foreign trained lawyers, right? Who might have
Absolutely
the background in analyzing legislation and regulations, and can get the CIPP, the CIPC designation relatively quickly, and really be able to take off in a privacy career. This one is a bit of an interesting one. So they talk about, Chat GPT and its utility being in the prompts, right? Yeah. Do you think there's going to be a job field in becoming a prompt engineer, someone who becomes specialized in how to use these tools?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and the jury's still out on that. No pun intended. I do believe there is, but I'm going to give some caveats there, and kind of explain my view on it. And this is where it's getting a little bit more of my personal opinion, because it's still very, very new, right? I've seen some positions in some magic circle firms in the UK, for example, where they've advertised and have hired people specifically for prompt engineering using tools like GPT. And I find that really interesting. And I believe that having these skills are important, but I'm going to give a little bit more of a foundation there as to why I think it's important. I don't necessarily think you're going to see a lot of jobs specifically as prompt engineer per se out there, although you will see some from time to time at some of these more innovative, progressive kind of firms. But again, we don't know what the longevity of that particular role is, or what it even is yet at this stage. What does the day of the life of a legal prompt engineer look like? But that said, having a legal background and having experience in the field obviously is going to give you the tools you need to use these large language models, which allow us to query in plain English, essentially. It's going to give you an advantage, obviously, right? Because if you understand the law and you know how to phrase the question correctly, and it's all focused on that, you're going to get more accurate results. And knowing how to structure that is going to be really important. So, if you couple that, your legal background and your experience, and if you understand the tools, the models that are being used here, and at a deeper level than just, how to structure a really good prompt, but maybe a background in working in the tools themselves. So, for example, a lot of the tools out there currently that have been built on top of Chat GPT, like Auto GPT. There's a lot of headlines out there as far as what is available. There are tools that you can actually work on and learn and build, even if you have a rudimentary kind of programming background, that allow you to actually learn how to manipulate this technology and use it appropriately. And you can do this for free on your own laptop. Upload all of the open source software that you need, the databases, all of that stuff that you need access to learn. Kind of coupling that knowledge and understanding how these frameworks work, how these models work to a large extent, understanding prompt engineering on top of that, and having that legal background, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I mean, there is absolutely no doubt that this area is going to grow. I am one of the believers in this area. I certainly wouldn't encourage anyone, and I'm sure we all feel the same way on this. I wouldn't say you don't want to practice law using Chat GPT, but large language models behind the scenes, when you're in a controlled environment, pointing at your own data, there's a whole different value there. And we're going to see more and more growth in that area. And so if anyone is interested in AI or has kind of dabbled in it and has that legal background, I would say continue with that and be happy with the fact that you can actually train yourself of all the online resources that are available and the technology, the open source technology, you can do this for free to a large extent, and learn what you need in order to really bring value in the future. So yeah, it's a long-winded answer, but I think there's some potential there.
You actually brought up a good point about not practicing Chat GPT law. What do you think about the implication for these tools and access to justice?
I'm hoping it leads in the right direction. Unfortunately, I've seen them like in the past in the industry, and I'm not necessarily saying with law firms per se, but more in the technology that has been developed by vendors and whatnot. That the idea was that these tools would help democratize law and allow a broader base, a more diverse base of clients for large firms or small, medium-sized boutique firms. I'm hoping it leads in that direction, right? I certainly think it gives the ability, lawyers the ability to actually, potentially repackage services that are more affordable so they have a broader base of clients. But it's a tough nut to crack, and it's really, really hard to say. I believe that it will create certain types of legal services will be commoditized. And I do actually think there's some value in that. And, again, I'm speaking my own personal opinion here. Some may disagree with me that, but I think there's a lot of possibility there. And I do think it's going to be a good thing for the public at large. But, again, it could be monopolized, this type of technology and whatnot. So, it's still a little early to say, but I'm hopeful, that it can be used in that manner. And I believe it can.
I think one of the comments I saw is that it may help smaller firms that don't have the same resources as big law be able to offer perhaps more nimbler service and
there's a bit of flattening of a flattening effect, I think, to a large extent. And I've been characterizing it this way recently in discussions that in the future, and this is again my own opinion on this, the answers are going to be democratized. It's going to be easier to get the actual answer. I'm not saying Chat GPT is where it's at necessarily right now, but I'm talking about how this technology evolves in the near future. It's going to be about what questions you ask. That's going to be the focus, right? That's where the real wisdom is going to come in. And so, yeah, the flattening effect will be real, but I feel that at the same extent, that experience that lawyers have and that unique relationship that they have with clients or in their understanding of industries and whatnot is what's going to really differentiate them from, maybe identifying that specific answer or that quick first draft that you're able to create in a large language model kind of application.
I think this is the sort of last question I can come up with, and I just thought of it really is, it's easy to think of some of the risks of using a tool like Chat GPT in the practice of law, the simple risk of it being wrong. But it's also a research model, and the information, OpenAI can do what they want with it. And I think that could create issues of solicitor-client privilege with information that could be put into Chat GPT and loss of control over it. Has there been any discussion about this already? What do you know about it?
Absolutely. And I'm sure you may have seen some of the headlines recently where some of that information is leaked of some literal queries that were from companies like Samsung, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was in the news recently for that. That is a concern, right? And so these large models currently, they're not commodified yet, and they're very, very large and controlled. They're a black box essentially, right? And in fact, even in my own experimentation and building potential solutions just to kind of explore the technology, you have to do an OpenAI API call in order to connect to them. So you're sending whatever data it is, in this case, definitely not client data, but test data to them and processing and bringing it back. As we move forward, and we're already starting to see some real progress with models that are performing at a level that's close to what GPT-4 is performing at, right? But they're much smaller, and you can host them in your own private environment. That's where that change is going to be, right? So in my mind, I'm not going to say necessarily that law firms won't utilize services like OpenAI, maybe not directly, but maybe through Microsoft, for example. What I do think is that once that is in a private environment and you point it specifically to your own data, so it's already been trained, but now it's fine-tuned on that specific data, that data moat that you've created within your firm, that's when you're going to get that real value. And I think that's when you're going to see the boom in the use of these tools at law firms. And so I don't think that's that far away. It sounds like something that might happen 5-10 years from now, but I think we've all seen kind of the way this has happened. I mean, think about what you've done on Chat GPT, for example. Now, if you went back and talked to yourself 6 months ago, you would have been like, that sounds like magic. There's no way I could actually do this, right? So we're already at a point where we're seeing things that just are unbelievable, compared to where we were, 6 months ago. So the idea of this being, hosted on, private networks within law firms, these types of technologies, I don't think it's too far off. And there are models out there that have been developed that already are doing this.
Thank you so much for that. Mykyta, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, Michael, do you have any quick tips for Ukrainian lawyers in Canada and for young Canadian lawyers?
Absolutely. Well, one I think is it's how we've met. It's networking, right? So LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. I'm a big believer in it. And reaching out to your network. And we all have similar interests and whatnot, and that's why we're having this conversation today, right? Broadening that network and reaching out and just asking questions. I do it all the time. One of my big things is I ask, anyone who's kind of established in the AI world, particularly in the legal AI world, and they're at this level, and I'm down here in the 5th grade level. I feel free to ask them questions, because that's how I learn and how you move forward. I think that's important. And the other thing is too is, if you find yourself in a position where you do have a unique spin on something, and you have a legal background or any kind of professional background, and you focus in a particular niche, getting that information out there, becoming a thought leader, speaking about it publicly, having workshops, webinars, getting a Substack account and writing on it, not only helps you refine your ideas and actually broadcast those ideas, but you build an audience from that, right? And you establish yourself as one of the experts in that particular area. And I think that's it. There are so many different avenues that and areas that we can focus on that you can't possibly be a generalist and know everything. So a lot of times, myself included, people I talk to, we look for these individuals and to learn from them, because there may be a specific problem that we're facing. We've never seen it before. We've never worked in this industry before. You're able to find that information. And then, with tools like, GPT, assuming you verify what the answers are, you can use those tools as well, but it's about networking, I think, more than anything, broadening that network and reaching out to individuals and colleagues and whatnot.